let our attendees in. We've got people joining now. Welcome to today's New Jersey Tech Council's Lunch and Learn. People are signing on. We have a great conversation today, sponsored by Outsystems, which we hugely appreciate, talking about the digital transformation in the wake of the disrupted economy. And we'll let people roll in. In the meantime, Neeraj, we'll start with you. Where are you physically actually joining us from today?
Aaron, I'm right outside Philadelphia in the Paoli area for the NJ folks there.
Nice. And Raj, how about you? Where are you?
I'm in Jersey City, close to Hoboken, where you are, I believe, right?
That's right, yeah. And CP, how about you?
I'm out of Chicago.
I think we got to get Raj to get you a pair of the cool glasses. I'm a big fan. That's our second Friday. We had Al Roker on last week, and he also has cool glasses.
I saw that, right? And CP is, he's a CTO, but he flies planes, so he's cooler than me,
You and I just pretend to be cool. He actually is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
Nobody can beat Rajesh. Cool.
So, welcome everyone. I see we still have a few more coming in, but we are going to get started. My name is Aaron Price. I'm the CEO of the New Jersey Tech Council. I'm sorry, I've got to mute these notifications so they don't bother us throughout the rest of this show. The New Jersey Tech Council, if you're not familiar with us, is built to empower the entrepreneurial and innovative community of New Jersey and beyond. If you're not familiar with us, we run a variety of programming to help you find talent, to help you find jobs, to help you build your companies faster. Check out njtc.org. Become a member if you aren't already. We've got a ton of programming coming up over the next many weeks, and so make sure you check out those programs. But today, really excited to chat with Fulcrum and Outsystems about how the world has changed and how digital's played a significant role and where we might be headed as whatever this new normal is unfolds. Before we get into that conversation, I'm going to hand it over to Neeraj from Outsystems, who we really appreciate joining as our sponsor today, just to share a little bit more about Outsystems.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aaron. And give me a second so that I can share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Okay. A lot of tabs open there. So I don't know how many of you have heard about Outsystems, and I'm not gonna do a marketing pitch for you guys here, but I do want to give you an overview from a high level what Outsystems is. So in the new world we are living in, digital transformation is something which is accelerated even further with what we ourselves found into. So think about Outsystems is your full stack and full life cycle application development, to build your web and mobile application. And the reason you would probably consider a platform like this is to basically accelerate your development. The traditional coding is slower. We kind of automate a lot of the things, and I'm going to talk to you about it a little bit, how we do that. But I also wanted to thank Fulcrum Digital, our partners, who actually take our platform and kind of really create meaningful application for your digital transformation in a very accelerated pace. So what is an Outsystems platform? Basically, if you think about it, we are a full stack platform. So when you're building applications, you need the data layer, process, logic, and UI. So in our platform, you can visually do any of those things. So if you have developers who are UI focused, or you have backend developers and you're thinking of how they can make applications, well, with the Outsystems platform, you can reuse or repurpose those skill set to build full set applications. So that's one piece of our platform. Second thing is any application you're building, if you think about it, they need to be integrated, right? You would have your existing databases or records or what have you, and then you have your enterprise system, billing system, SAPs of the world, and then also everybody is kind of bringing all these cloud services which are available in the market for point solution. And then anything which is not kind of included, then you have like your APIs which you need to connect to for different things you might have developed. So our platform kind of allows you to visually integrate into all those systems and APIs to kind of, again, accelerate your development of web and mobile application. And also we support, thousands of connectors which are available on our open source to kind of, again, accelerate your development, as you seeing me repeat that again and again. But once you have developed the application, you need the DevOps piece too, right? How are you going to move your application from one environment to another? How are you going to make sure there's governance included in this? How are you going to make sure that the testing is part of that whole plan? So we are a full service DevOps platform also with full stack and full service I was talking about. And then what you're also noticing in the field today is once you develop an application that's your like version 1.0, for example, so we need to have business or your end user giving you feedback to kind of have the agility to kind of keep modifying or updating your application. Again, that's part of our platform. But why are we doing all those things? If you think about it, I mean, a lot of these applications are built today to kind of create that awesome experience for your end users, right? I mean, any application which end user is using today, we don't give them a manual how to use it. So user experience is paramount. And what we have done is, our applications are available on all sorts of form factor you might have, whether a PC, Mac, Linux machine, iPad, phones and what have you. So we make it available on all those form factors, even though if you're not a mobile developer. And then you're probably also seeing all these applications today kind of need those, AI integration into it, like the chatbots, like, I don't know if you've used a Comcast application recently, you can actually chat with somebody on the phone application. And by the way, the behind the scenes is an AI bot which is responding to you. So with our platform, you can integrate into those kind of platforms or services from AWS or IBM Watson or what have you to kind of create that awesome experience for end users. Again, this is one of the top reasons people are kind of creating that digital experience to give that awesome experience to your end users, whether employees or your external customers and users. So once you have the application, you probably want to make sure that that platform which you're building this application is scalable, right? I mean, yes, internal users you might have in thousands, but when you talk about your customers could be in millions and millions of users. So this platform is designed to support those millions of users. And then again, I mean, I was just looking and searching like what are the top things which are on CIOs or every digital transformation mind is security. So anything you're going to give out or release to your people gotta be secure. So as a platform, we have 200 plus security checks when you're developing your application or building your application visually to our platform. So that's, again, part of the pre-built set of our platform. Performance, yes, I mean, you can scale, but you should be able to create that performance which is standard in today's world. I mean, people don't have the time to kind of wait for seconds to things show up. Again, pre-built in the platform. And then the deployment aspect, I mean, customers want to kind of deploy these applications in different ways. We have our cloud offering, but sometimes people have their private cloud. They want to do it there, or they want to do it self-managed for many different reasons, security reasons, or they just want to have full control. Again, our platform gives you all those flexibility. So I'll pause, Aaron, and thank you for your time. I hope this gives you a good overview of what Outsystems platform can help you in your digital transform journey.
It sure does. Thank you so much again for sponsoring today. And before you drop off, there are a variety of tools available to developers on what they should, systems to use. Why should they consider Outsystems as their number one choice?
Well, first of all, we have no limit development in our platform. What I mean by that is, sometimes, you would get all these platform in the industry, which is like, okay, yeah, you can visually develop it, but the coder wants to go further. We have no limits. You can still go and extend the platform with your own code too. So that's one of the main reason people kind of, see like we are not going to be limited in our development, even using a platform like Outsystems.
Great. Well, we really appreciate your, not just your sponsorship, but Outsystems membership in the organization. We're going to say bye for now, but I know you're going to be monitoring the chat. I believe there may be some others from Outsystems that you're welcome to introduce yourselves in the chat. And before we get on to the rest of this conversation, let me explain some of the kind of ground rules and how this works. So think about this like you would, the attendees at a regular event. Jump into the chat. I see a few of you have done this already. Introduce yourself, say where you are specifically to drive a little sense of community. If you have actual questions, put them in the Q&A. I will do my best to weave them into the conversation as we go. It's a little challenging to monitor the chat, so I know people tend to put questions in there. Outsystems and some Jasmine and Anna perhaps from the council will monitor them, but if you want me to try to get them on the show, put them in that Q&A. So with that, Niraj, you can turn off your video, but we'll perhaps bring you back in later on as questions show up. But let's get to Raj and CP from Fulcrum Digital. Again, thank you both for joining us today. Excited about this conversation. We have a few areas of conversation specifically that we're going to focus around on digital transformation. Before we get into those specific topics, we'd just love to have you each quickly introduce yourselves and share a little bit more about Fulcrum.
Great. Thank you, Aaron, for having us. And you're running such a great organization. Always proud to be associated with you and your organization. So my name is Rajesh Sinha. I'm a chairman of Fulcrum Digital. Company has been around for last 20 years, and we call ourselves as a business platform company. So call it business platform 2.0 company. So 50% our focus is offering our own business platform as a software as a service, and 50% we build business platform for large and medium-sized enterprises like big banks and insurance companies, healthcare companies. So we go down there and get them to a transformative journey, right? So that's what we do. We are globally about 1,000 employees company, headquartered here in Jersey City, and that's where right now I'm sitting and speaking with you.
Great. CP.
Hi, good morning to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're from. I'm out of Chicago. I've been here most of my life, and I'm the global CTO for Fulcrum, which frankly, from a responsibility standpoint, has three distinct parts to it. Head up enterprise architecture of the company. We have a product engineering pillar within the technology office that deals with all of our product engineering, and all of the platforms that Rajesh speaks to essentially comes out of the tech office and its engineering capability. And lastly, of course, we do pioneer the labs in many ways, an innovation lab, which is partly self-consumed, so we can stay ahead of the curve and stretch the envelope where possible. But then we also build microcosms of innovation for our clients and customers. So either we offer it up to them after we have built it, or we run it for them, or we just proof and prototype ideas through the 4-stage ideation cycle. But the labs falls into the tech office as well. So that in a nutshell is what my role is, and traverses geographies and our worldwide footprint.
And you also run the innovation lab. Can you just share with people, we're going to touch on this a little bit more later on, but what that is?
Sure. As I said, the labs was initially a concept we put together so that we could stay ahead of the curve. It was to ideate through our own pipeline of ideas, to stretch our thinking, to keep our people up to date. But slowly and surely, it became an offering that we began to take out to our customers because they evidenced interest. We do build labs for our clients inside their organizations, which are microcosms of the larger context in which they operate. We take on ideas if they have one to proof and prototype it. We run innovathons where we show clients and customers what can be accomplished in 3 hours of development time. If you have an idea, come to us, we'll proof it, prototype it, and give it to you at a stage where you can go back and industrialize the concept. We actually set up workshops that we can ideate with our customers and help them probe their thinking to come up with a pipeline of ideas. And of course, last case, we own the labs, we run it for them from a product management standpoint for our customers and manage the entire I2I lifecycle, the ideation, proofing, prototyping, and industrialization lifecycle end to end for them. So there are many flavors of the labs in terms of an offering, but in a sense, it's essentially focused on dealing with the velocity of change to stave off obsolescence for our clients and help them stay ahead of the curve. The term legacy is becoming more frequent. We're trying to stay ahead of it ourselves and help our clients stay ahead of the curve. Before stuff becomes legacy, we want to make sure the term legacy doesn't enter the conversation very too often.
Yeah, great. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these areas of conversation for today. As I mentioned, we've got a few things we're going to discuss. The first, specifically around what those of you see on your screen here. And hello, Barry. Glad you like the sessions and the Chicago pizza. How today's pandemic is impacting business, and so how have you seen businesses adapt to the pandemic, and where do you believe there's opportunity right now? Raj, I'll start with you.
All right, great. Thank you. Great question. So I'll give you the real example with our current customers, what we are facing and how we are navigating with them, right? So we have been, we are not expert of this COVID scenario, right? Like all of us, this is the first time we get hit with this kind of challenge. And whether our employees or customers or ourselves, we are all in the boat at the same place, same time. So just being honest, being transparent, and trust has worked for us. When we dealt with some of the customers, we felt that some of the customers got hit big time, like the people who were into food industry and supplying food to school districts. Schools are closed, universities are closed, so you cannot cater food to them, right? So that's the one challenge. But when in other industries, like where the food is getting catered to hospitals, that's growing, right? So one angle we see impact, another angle we see the opportunities. So we got to help both sides of the customers. You got to cooperate, you got to trust them, and bring that relationship. From employees' perspective, we saw that being a technology company, it gives us some advantage to work remotely and use cloud and all the infrastructure available with us. So guys were all up and running 98% of time. But having a trust with employees also worked in our favor because this is the first time everyone working from home has a different landscape, right? So presenting a challenge of employee side and a customer side was the first challenge we faced, and putting a business continuity plan, believing in our culture and value system. If the servers were not working with the same performance level and employees had to log into server late hours, they collaborated together. So that demonstrated that our culture and values are working in place. Our business continuity plan people, they met every day to resolve the issues on a day-to-day basis. So, we have been facing the challenges during the COVID. Now I think it's a time for us to assess, adopt, and accelerate,
How early were you to send employees home?
Most of at least 40% of the employees were anyway working from home in our business. They have been given a remote access, but there were many insurance company and banks for whom we work. The employees were supposed to come to office. It took us about a week to fully stabilize that 98% of the employees were working from home. Because we have employees development center in Lisbon, London, Latin America, Brazil, and Argentina, there we didn't have a lot of internet issues. We have center in India, in Pune and Mumbai, they were fine, but some of the employees went to remote locations in India. They had some internet issues, so we had to deal with them. So that took a little longer time, but I would say about week to 10 days, 98% of the employees were up and running.
Yeah. How have you seen the client work change because of the pandemic?
As I said, client has started to assess their situation, right? So there were things were in the pipeline for us to kickstart the new projects that were put on hold, right? So we had to adjust with their timeline. As I mentioned about the food industry business, right? So when they came and talked to us, they are our long-term customers. So we have to adjust our commercial terms with them or work with them, right? Then they said, we just need a help for a month or 2 months. So you got to be having a trusted relationship, long-term relationship, and you adjust a mechanism with them, right?
Yeah.
Very quickly, I think by now, I see a lot of other customers are opening up. They are looking to accelerate the pace, and business platforms and the technology, what we offer is going to be used more and more in the after COVID world. Everyone wants to automate their business process. They want to augment the technologies, bring newer technologies in the premises, less human interaction. So I see more opportunities, but we had to cooperate with our customers and give some helping hand,
Yeah. I think that's a great segue into the next question, which is, what do you think is the biggest impact that COVID-19 has on digital organizations?
In my view, I feel that most of the companies are going to look for business platforms. So digital technologies has been understood as a silo technologies, and now it's very much required for everyone to understand it's integrated technologies. So you cannot look at your business only from your customer's perspective. You have to look at the business from your employee's perspective, and it has to be measured equally, So when a situation like this comes in, you want your employees to be 100% productive. You want your customers to be productive. So you cannot afford to have systems running in-house most of the time where you would require personal touch to it, So I see the challenges are going to come in the digital space. People who have not gone to the business platform strategies, they'll be more than ever thinking about putting their foot forward in this direction. So if they don't put their foot forward, then I think they will be left behind.
Yeah. CP, innovation is often, it's a very broad term, often seen as kind of the champion of looking at opportunity. So I wonder how you think about, how innovation, particularly through the lens of technology here, is applied to organizations where they've been massively disrupted, whether it's, in how they communicate with their employees or how they deliver their products and services.
Indeed, I think innovation is a very overused word. In fact, perhaps far too used, to the point where it's beginning to lose some of its meaning. It's becoming harder to define what really is innovation. And on one end of the spectrum, you can define that if you did anything in a new way, then you did it yesterday, or you could call it innovation. But then I have been running labs for many years and having innovation centers built or centers of excellence built around innovation. I've tried to maintain a basic bar which defines what is meaningful innovation. And so domain-driven innovation in areas that pertains to either the 5 drivers of any corporation. I think some parts of personal life are in the same categories. Either you're going after revenue opportunities, you're going after cost reduction or optimization, operational excellence, employee satisfaction, or a higher degree of customer satisfaction. So there are 5 key drivers that most of us would like to focus on. There are some subtle other drivers. If you're not in the standard businesses, you could even look at invention as being one of the areas that you would want to put yourself in. If you're an R&D company, you would need that. So in having a domain-driven model, I think innovation applies to any of these areas that you're being able to create meaningful impact. So ideas could be in the pipeline from any one of these domains, right? These axes are all there for you to drive innovation around. But unless substantiated with a meaningful value proposition in defining what that innovation could lend itself to, or to who, or the audience that it lends itself to, the word starts to lose meaning very quickly. Even little things will start looking like innovation, but would not produce significant impact in any one of these areas. If you're not impacting your employees, if you're not impacting customers, if you're not creating value, and if you're not seeing the lagging indicators in terms of revenue or profitability show a shift, then to me, yes, it could mean innovation, but it's not done what it's meant to do. So giving it some definition has been my first task. When anyone talks to me about innovation, I always come back and say, what do you mean by it? What would you like to see happen? And then since I'm a measures and metrics person, I try to put some metrics to it, because measures also perhaps won't lead to much. I have seen measures where people may say, hey, let's have everyone in the company dedicate 2 hours a week to something that's innovative, or let them each produce 3 ideas for the pipeline. Means little or nothing in the end. At the end of the year, you'll find yourself in a void. But if you did apply meaningful metrics rather than absolute measures, whether it's 2 ideas or 25 ideas, it doesn't matter. So long as they got transitioned into an industrialized situation where it became real and started to impact one or more of these axes, I think then you have generated a lab in any form or shape that in fact has contributed to growth overall, either inside the company or outside the company.
What are some real examples that you're excited about now, of projects that you're working on, things maybe you've already delivered that are different perhaps than, the pre-pandemic world? How have the needs shifted, and what have you delivered that maybe you've had a lot of pride in?
I think the bulk of what has come in the last 2 months, which to be honest with you, has also been coming for a period of time in the past 2 or 3 years. In a decade now, I think things have shifted from where I stand with my 33-year career. But definitely in the last 2 months, unprecedented circumstances, naturally requiring unprecedented solutions. And so most of the demand has been in trying to get through the COVID crisis in one or more forms. I think a couple of them that come to mind immediately are contact tracing systems in some form or the other. We have had more than one inquiry about how can we put something together that allows for social distancing to be meaningfully implemented without intrusion of privacy and whatnot, as much as we're all worried about that. So that's an area that naturally, if you take it one step further, goes back into the other area, which everyone on this line would have heard of before, pertaining to machine learning and artificial intelligence in some fashion or the other. So combine those two, there's been a plethora of requests that have come our way, and can you help us with this? Beginning with as simple an idea about putting an app together that can run on the phone that can help with social distancing, to tracing people who may be infected and therefore wanting to be stayed away from, and then onwards into much bigger ideas of the recovery will have to come. And when it does come, whether it's V-shaped, W-shaped, or U-shaped, any form of recovery will require a change in strategy going forward. Most of them have gone back to keeping the lights on in the last 2 months. But ideas can be put on hold forever. Then what comes up would be the next term that Rajesh spoke about, acceleration. Not that we were all trying to push acceleration, we're not trying to put acceleration ahead in the last 10 years. I think it's become a predominant ask of, can you help us get there quicker? And so requests have been in the form of, how can I build this in half the time that I would have thought of doing it by the year end? Or I think I may need to spend less on one hand, but also not content with that compressed time and build it in half the time I would have planned for it. So those kinds of requests have been the dominant ones in the past 3 months, especially that people put things on hold. There's even lesser time to go get them accomplished. Some projects may not come back this year or next year at all. They may be left alone for the next 2 or 3 years, but some you have inevitably required. And so you'd have to speed up. And that's where the whole concept of assembly and aggregation starts to come into play.
Yeah. I think regardless of the shape, U's, W's, we'll all be happy with the recovery, whatever it looks like.
Absolutely. Can I add one more point?
Sure.
Aaron? As CP mentioned, what is the need right now? What we are seeing is an experience layer. So if you look at most of the medium, small size enterprise, or even large, right? There are 3 layers of the business. And Neeraj also alluded in his OutSystem architecture, and I will translate that into a business terms, right? So any layman can understand. Every business has 3 layers: data, logic, and experience. And I'll explain that, right? So data, everyone has employee, customer, product data. Business has a process, and that logic is mapped there. And then you have a presentation layer, which you give an experience to your employees and your customers, right? If you call it a solid, liquid, gas, and if you analyze and use that metaphor to understand how you keep it, today customers are not interested in investing a lot into data, not into changing many business processes, but they are interested in bringing experiences to their customers. And that's when CP mentioned about mobile app, right? Extended reality, virtual reality, using IoTs or any device which can deliver the experience of your business platform, which takes less time, less money, but touches bigger business process and bigger business economy is what is needed in the market. And that's what we are hearing from the customers as well.
Yeah. I wanted to follow up on that point around the reality that a lot of budgets have been cut, right? So a lot of organizations have these needs, but for CIOs and CTOs who are facing fewer resources, how can they continue to keep pace? How can they even consider accelerating their business with fewer resources?
I'll take this.
Yeah.
In the last 2 months, actually, I will tell you in the office I run, the technology office, I think I have made more progress in the last 2.5 months, despite all the challenges that we have had, than perhaps in the last 6 to 10 months. And there's been a few different drivers for that. One is the added pace of insights that we are needing to provide our customers. If we can't stay ahead as a consulting firm, and naturally we can't expect to deliver any better advice to anyone out there. So there has been an inherent requirement to go expedite our own insight development in a variety of ways, so that we could stay ahead of the curve and talk to our customers about it. Now, the second thing is we have tried to leverage whatever downtime we have had on account of what's happening, the slowdown, especially in the first 2 or 3 weeks, when everything went back to keeping the lights on and a lull came in. We leveraged all of our resources to go build out whatever componentry we could build in anticipation of a COVID type response, either in the short term or the medium term. That is another way that we dealt with the opportunity itself. We saw some opportunity in the crisis to invest in ourselves, to invest in our customers, to do more for our customers. The other side to it that has changed would be, how can we be ready when they come back to us, so that there is far more readiness on our part to go give them higher value as soon as they return and say, hey, we can go now. We don't want to go back and tell them it'll take them the same old timeline. So we invested in putting components together, and that's in progress as we speak. All of these put together, I think, have brought about a new sense of realization in terms of what it used to be before the COVID crisis, what it will become after the crisis starts to somewhat slow down or pace out. But in the end, the requirements are not going to go away, the needs are not going to die. Some may shift, some may differ, but most will remain. And in that process, here's where our innovation counts. And that's what we have used the time for.
Yeah. We're going to bounce around topics a little bit because we do have some interesting questions that I want to weave in. And the first is more just on your own operations, because I think this has come up with a lot of business owners. Chris was asking if you're providing any expense reimbursement for employees for their internet connections or other home office expenses while everyone's working remote.
Rajesh, take that question.
So reimbursement is all, transferring the money to their accounts, right? So we have a finance operations, we have all the employee transactions, we have bank accounts. So all these are automated processes. So with
I think specifically, are you offering employees to cover their internet connection or any other expense?
Sure. That's part of the policies, right? Because if you are saving the expenses for employees while they're in the office, they are spending it. So you are offering those kind of benefits to employees. So HR all across the globe are in touch with them and have formulated the policies to reimburse the employees. Yeah.
So Ken asked, and maybe Ken, we might need a little more detail on this, but it's an interesting question. He said, describe how your firm may address gaps in data analytics at a large global firm impacted by the challenges in supply chain anti-corruption. And the reason I bring it up is because he's saying it's a real case he's dealing with at a Fortune 100 firm. I'm not even sure I fully understand the question, but I'm hoping you do. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So can you repeat the question one more time?
How your firm would address gaps in data analytics at a large global firm that's been affected by challenges in supply chain. The part where I'm a little cloudy is tied into anti-corruption.
I think in general, I'll give you a more first the general response to what we have tried to do, not specific to anti-corruption, but in general, I'll tell you the approach to dealing with work nowadays should have shifted earlier, but definitely has shifted now. Assembly and aggregation has become the principle for a few years now. It's not new, entirely new. And frankly, programmatic approaches to dealing with things from the ground up had begun to slow down anyway. We just never had the tooling in place, the ability, the infrastructure, the competence to go after assembly type models. Where that leads to is acceleration of outcomes. But even in the space of data and analytics, the challenge traditionally has been to bring stuff up from the ground all the way to its fruition. The ability to be able to aggregate components, which many of them exist in today's ecosystem that we survive in business-wise. Our model has generally been to go aggregate as much as we can from the outside. So whether it's an insurance fraud monitoring service and or a stock ticker service and or a background check service with regard to student side background checks or employee side background checks, the ability to bring them to bear on a problem in as realistically a time frame as possible without having to invest in ground up development, it has what has led to acceleration of these outcomes. So our approach typically has been not to build stuff from the ground up. And even in the space of analytics, dashboards, even further along into machine learning and I would say RPA, AI-driven RPA, we have tried our best to ensure we build as little as possible and aggregate as much as we can. If a simple search anywhere on the net will allow you to get a whole bunch of services that deal with these topics that you're bringing up and have pertaining services that are relevant and correspond to them.
Yeah. Akash, I do see your questions in the chat and I'll get to some of these. If you could, for additional questions or further questions, put them in the Q&A. It's a little bit easier for me to manage. We're gonna move on to this next topic around automation, augmentation, and innovation with the nice slide that goes along with it. The first question here is, stress levels or stress scenarios like the pandemic do introduce opportunity. And so do you think that digital businesses should be pulling back and more moderate, or should they get more aggressive to try to get a competitive advantage? And how do they make that distinction and choice?
Okay. Can I throw
Raj,
some?
I'll go to you, yeah?
So I correlate this answer. I'll give you the answer with the perspective of marathon. I ran a few marathons, so I have some analogy. In marathon, when you go and run, you don't put all your energy in your first 10 miles or first 5 miles, right? You pace yourself, you conserve your energy because it's a long race. And same thing is about COVID. It's not a sprint, it's a long haul, and you got to have those energy in place with you. You have to, replenish your water intake. You have to take some salt and energy bars at different milestones. The same thing about digital technologies and your business, right? Today, I think we are at, even a half mark, not even half marathon mark we have reached. And we still have to go half marathon. And you know that after 20 miles, you will hit the wall, right? So whether you are consuming these digital technologies, you have to conserve your energy. And I firmly believe moderation is the right strategy. You cannot burn everything pretty fast. You cannot slow down. You got to maintain this moderation pace, because you got to, you need to reserve the energy so that you don't hit the wall. And for remaining after 20 miles, you have 6.2 miles to run, right? So you got to have those more ideas, more energy from the market, more revenue coming from the market with your augmentation and automation strategy, so that you can finish this race pretty strong. So moderation would be the mantra I would add here.
I mean, I think one of the most important parts of your metaphor there is that you know how long that marathon is. We don't know how long this marathon is. Right. And I do think there are companies that are trying to get aggressive and may burn out quickly because they may not have the staying power. But I think, I do think it's a tricky balance, because some see this as, well, everyone's a little bit, quiet. They can step up to the plate and try to do things a little more creatively. So what do you, with that in mind, CP, what do you think the role is for the technology community and technology specifically in getting through some of this, if it's moderation? How do you keep at least some edge, and how does technology play a role?
I think there's another parallel question that gets answered here, which is about, do you believe digital transformation is all about technology? That's a question that came up here from Akash.
Yes.
I'll merge the two together. In fact, the answer is it's not. And that is where moderation actually starts to get blended in, because it's not. I don't think technology in itself can do much without having the other pieces in place. That's why we go by the 3P metaphor most of the time. There is the human aspect, people, process, and technology, or people, process, and product. And so there are all three elements plus some other dimensions over on top of that. Since it's not all about technology, I think we are already augmenting. I mean, we are augmenting people where productivity has fallen in some cases. We're augmenting people. We're augmenting some places with technology. We are actually taking down the path of becoming aggressive in certain areas where automation can play a role. Things that we could allow people to go do yesterday, we are unable to do that now. So we allow technology to do in whatever shape or form, as much as robotic process automation may help, even simple forms of automation could help do other things. So we're adopting automation there. And then we are innovating. In fact, as we speak, I think every company, every one of the participants here has innovated in the past 2 months in some shape or form. And as trivial or as serious that innovation may be, all three of these areas have become relevant. So given all that context, in my opinion, if you don't apply this to the DNA of the case in point, which every one of which is different, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all strategy on how much augmentation, how much automation, or how much innovation to either increase or decrease in these circumstances. I think it is important to moderate, and that moderation level in each of these three axes will depend on the DNA of the firm you're talking about or the organization you're referring to.
To be clear on this recommendation on moderation, are you suggesting that companies not get too aggressive in trying to develop new products and services at this time?
I think they won't be able to get too aggressive. In my opinion, I think there's a finite limit on how aggressive you can get with any one of these strategies, be it augmentation, automation, and or innovation. There are finite limits to it, both financial and otherwise, right? I mean, you have financial constraints and you have strategic constraints on who you'll go after, some of which your customers may not even be interested in talking about right now. I just got off a call this morning and the conversation was, well, this is not even the time to be discussing this, right? I mean, where is the context for this? So I don't think even if someone wanted to be too aggressive, they would get away with it. Those who did get too aggressive, I think will find themselves short of breath. I'm a runner as well, like Rajesh is, and you'll find yourself short of breath pretty soon if you're trying to run this through at a fast pace. I think stepping through it one step at a time has been my mantra, and take the opportunity by the day, seize it where you can, and where you don't find one, try to create one, and if you can find any resistance, to pull back and wait it out another day.
Yeah. Barry asked, what kind of backlog or bottleneck issues have you been facing since COVID, and how do you go about prioritizing some of those challenges? Raj, I'll go to you. Go ahead.
So Barry, I'll share this, right? If you have read this book, Blitzscaling, so there you will find the analogy where it says you cannot build a plane while you're flying, right? And these are the times where we have a lot of backlogs. And I'll tell you, we got to do that now, right? we are not in a growth phase. We are at a phase where we got to manage our backlog while, we are building a plane while we are flying. So we have a lot of backlogs. You got to prioritize. And as I mentioned at the start of the conversation, you got to assess, you got to adopt, and you got to accelerate. And once you have that strategy in place, you learn what to consume. And from your backlog, you take those minimum viable options, which you can offer to your customers and employees. You chew that first, and then you think about accelerating, So your assess, adopt has to be well thought through. And that's how we are consuming our backlog strategies.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great transition to the next topic around business platforms and culture, as the world has shifted. The first question is the one on the screen here. What do you each believe the new normal would look like? And I'm curious in regards to whether you think it's, your own internal operations, dealing with customers, even balancing, we've had conversations about, does work look like 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, or do things change dramatically because we have to have different ways of balancing remote work? So kind of open playing field here, but CP, I'll start with you, but Raj, I want you to chime in on this as well.
Sure, thank you.
I don't think, in the past 2 decades as much, the velocity, as I go back to that word, I use that a whole lot in my writing. The velocity of change is so high, or has been high, and it only gets higher with every day, that I don't think in the past 2 decades, we've actually seen a normal settle in at all. We had the 2001 crisis, we've had 2008, we had 2012. Now going back into history, you'll find every other 10 years, you'll find something that doesn't always remain normal. And so I'm never sure of the term normal, actually. I think change is the only constant. And if change is the only constant, we're always adapting. The fact is, I have professed this, I've worked on this for about 2.5 decades now, to get companies to transform to being nimble. I will avoid the word agile for now because it's another much used, overused word, but nimble. And so my goal has been to create nimble operations for corporations. And I take a portfolio approach to that. And that's where my whole life in transformation has been spent. Those companies that had already settled into being nimble, today will find adapting really simple to do. It won't be hard for them. Those who were partly rigid will be struggling, but this is the best opportunity they can take, or they're almost forced to take, both from a cost reduction and a revenue standpoint, to go become more nimble and become more adaptive in the way they operate. Ultimately, everything about life is adapting. The whole human race is all about adapting as well. So if getting nimble is the question, those who are there, I think the new norm would perhaps be, they would be unfazed by it. Though are partly rigid, this is their time and opportunity to go find out how they can become more nimble. So regardless of the environment, you know how to adapt really quickly to a new circumstance.
And I think what's so interesting about that is culturally, especially large organizations, I think want to be nimble. This has forced many to get nimble, but it's a dramatic shift. We, the council, have a variety of meetings like this, publicly, privately, where we're inviting in larger corporations, and it is clear that culturally the smaller organizations are used to this kind of technology, are very comfortable being nimble. I think that's an appropriate word. And the larger organizations are adapting their best, but have that sense of like, oh, is it on? Is it working? This is weird. I'm at home. And I wonder if you think that they can adapt quickly enough to remain competitive. That's one basic example, but that mentality, I think, infuses the organization. Can they become nimble? Can a large organization that must become nimble in this time actually do so? Raj, I'll go to you.
Yeah. So I'm a great fan of one of our customers, which is Crum and Foster. And I know the CEO, Mark Eddy, he has created a great organization with multiple business units. So if you are running a large corporation, and if you have given empowerment to your presidents and business units to run their organization with the decentralization policies, then you already taken the strategy of being nimble, But if you have kept your large corporation as one big entity with all the players inside it, I think that will take a longer time. And I would still feel that they will have to change, but it's a long process. But, other companies, they will be faster to adapt this, entrepreneurial mindset or nimble approach. But I firmly believe they will change, and larger organization will take a little longer time, but they will change. They will bring one culture called hybrid culture, I call it, right? So employees will have a culture being in the office, and employees have now new culture of being at work, being at home and at work, right? So being at home at work and being at work, both have to coincide together. Yeah. And we just ran a survey recently with all our employees, and it was very interesting to know how many people are interested in coming back to work, right? And, you know, we have a Lefrax building, and I was looking at it. Even everybody wants to come, we cannot bring all of them to the office, right? So only 30% employees will be seen in the office. So for next 6 months, I don't see everyone sitting in the office, right? But some of them will start coming to office. So we have to live and coexist with them. Can we learn to have fun with them while they are at home? Absolutely. How do we collaborate with them? How do you create your culture value systems while they are remote? I think that's the mantra of an HR team, to think about hybrid culture. And, you know, faster you understand and implement, better value you will create for your company.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We've got David from Prudential on the line who mentioned how quickly Prudential, and I give them a lot of credit, went remote, and said that they were one of the first to go remote, but certainly won't be one of the first back. I wonder if you think that, you know, I think I'm curious if part of the results of your survey were around people just desperate for more social and human interaction. But if everyone wants to be in the office, once we normalize a bit, however long that takes, do you believe we have a 5-day-a-week work week? Not work week, in the office, right? Do you see some dramatic changes in the way that we actually operate as companies?
Sure. We got to be flexible. We may not start that way, that 5 days a week. We will have a flexi timing. We'll have a work schedule. If we have interest of more than 30-40% of employees are interested in coming to office, we'll have to plan their schedule. You know, some are coming for these 3 days, some are coming for remaining 2 days. And based on the work pace, we have to invite them to office for meeting, client meetings, collaboration, and things like that. So it may not be 5 days. It will have to have a rolling schedule, which you will have to run it for the first 2 to 3 months. And then you take another pace, and then you can set some kind of cadence and say that, okay, now you come for regular 3 days or regular 4 days. But I still feel it's, you know, going forward next year, we got to have more time given to employees work from home. A lot of my employees had that practice, and I was the one, you know, I wanted more people to have a face time in the office. Now with this COVID, I think personally, I learned that, you know, you can do a lot of things using the platforms like Teams, and, you know, I'm busy from 9 o'clock till 6 o'clock with the video calls like this, you know, and being more productive than I was before. And so I think we should all learn to embrace these technologies and go forward with it.
Agreed.
I can just add one point.
Go ahead.
I came from very large companies. You know, I worked for United Airlines, in fact, in the 2001 crises. Took a serious hit, right? All the aviation industry went almost completely downhill, like it has gone now, maybe worse now than before. But I think these opportunities help large companies truly change. I mean, the next 5 years of my life at the airline, indeed, I gave up some, you know, took some pay cuts, gave up some, you know, of my salary and whatnot. But what came through that perhaps was an MBA in learning in terms of how to manage an operation under crises. So if companies too decide to adopt change and adapt well, I think there'll be a way to get out of it, come out stronger, like the airlines had until now recently. But I 50 or 60% of my career has been spent in very large companies. And I think even within large companies, microcosms of speed and nimbleness exist and should be encouraged. I think the rest will learn. And with time, I think more and more things change. And so I've seen that happen. My career has been a downward curve of size of companies I work for because of the type of work I want to do. But clearly working for all the large companies, General Motors, GE, United itself, eye-opening exercises, in fact, and how crisis forces people to change.
Yeah. You know, I just want to spend another minute on this topic. You know, Padma, who I believe is from the Department of Labor, and David, again, from Prudential, have asked some questions about just the practicality of going back to work. Even if there might be a scenario where you're trying to rotate people in through an office, but schools are remote. And so juggling, you know, I have a 7 and 10-year-old downstairs who I try to make sure don't interrupt me during these webinars. It's a pretty substantial challenge. I think there's some practical human issues that we need to juggle. And I wonder how, and then, you know, Padma was talking about having employees wear a mask for 6, 7, 8 hours throughout the day is not the most comfortable thing to do as well. Even just getting in the elevator and larger high rises, I think there's a real problem there. I mean, have you thought about how you might manage some of those issues practically, and some steps that you could take to make it a little bit easier to transition?
Yeah.
Open floor.
All right. So we have been doing this kind of a mind share and having a committee formed for debating what employees are thinking. Our HR and our CEO's office, they are debating every day. How are we going to handle the employee safety issues, productivity issues? And we are continuously forming that policies, and we haven't implemented it. We are waiting for government's regulations to come forward. And once it is up, we are open to bringing some of the employees, not all of them, as I said, 30%. And how do we make them sit inside the office? How do we get their, where are they going to go and get their food out from? Can we have the food supplies inside the office? Public transport, are they going to take, bring their own cars, or are they going to take the public transport? So there have been a lot of these kind of questions which we are addressing through our policies. Coming back to schools, I don't know how schools are going to react, but there is one aspect I will share where we touch the school business. We cater food to school industries, right? So our software products are sold to all the schools, and the food manufacturers, they provide food to schools. We are thinking of providing food to home, right? So if the foods are delivered at home, so Aaron, today you don't have to cook for your kids, the food is coming at home. So you save time, other people can save time, and kids get their meal at home, right? So coming up with innovative ideas like that so that we can create it's like we are in crisis. Can we all help each other and benefit and survive and accelerate from this space? One of the things I wanted to mention that in this crisis, one thing we launched was COVID care policies from our side, and all the audience who are hearing this, please avail this opportunity. As a Fulcrum, we call ourselves IT doctor, and we cannot go to the hospital and help those patients, but we thought as a company, we should go forward and help free of cost to all the corporations. If your employees have been sick because of COVID and your servers are crashing, you are facing a lot of challenges, take our employees. We are not going to charge you $1. We'll help you recover. We'll spend a few days and have our team support you, get you up and running so that your machines and your employees are productive and no strings attached. This is not a free gimmick. It's not something. We just want to do it and forget it, So this is what our gesture is to the community. So please feel free to avail it.
That's a great offer. I should have pointed out earlier, because we'll wrap up soon, but before people drop off, where can people learn more about Fulcrum Digital?
So our website, fulcrumdigital.com, and we are all over on the social media as well nowadays. So people can follow us, learn about our customer stories, but best place is fulcrumdigital.com, and they can learn a lot.
Great. I do think that there's an interesting, we're the New Jersey Tech Council, and I think there's a real interesting New Jersey opportunity around, lots of people around the state commute. It's not the most fun thing to do, and our transportation systems can be unreliable. I think there's an opportunity for New Jersey to emerge as a place that can have a good hybrid model for allowing people to get access to work, but also have a comfortable work from home environment. Especially being around New York City, where a lot of people in New York City don't want to be in the office. I think there's a real opportunity here for us to take advantage in a very positive way to set up a system to be a more forward-thinking workplace, work style, or work environment for the future. I do want you to know that June has given you a giant endorsement in the chat, so we appreciate that, June. Let's get to the last topic in just the last couple of minutes here, which is around the specific needs of certain industries, right? We've seen outsized impact in certain industries. Where do you think some industries, may recover? Where do you think things are changing forever? How does technology play a role? CP, we'll start with you.
I think it goes without saying that some industries are going to take the brunt of this much more than the others. The travel transportation space that I came from for a lot of my career, I think will take the brunt of this in a big, big way. I believe the food business out in the public spaces with the food chains around are going to take another hit. Many of them perhaps will be stuck in the red for a long, long time if they survive at all. So from my standpoint, everything we've talked about in the last, I won't take a whole lot of time, I know we're short on time now, but the piece that technology is pervasive in a variety of ways, whether it's technology being used to distance yourself socially from other people and or detect someone else who had the issue, so you want to be farther off from them, and or find places that are active and open while others are not, or even down to the point of having commerce transactions just be completely touch-free. So you're not touching anything, be it cash notes and or change or even credit cards, but you can do it with near-field communications of any form. I think in a variety of ways, you'll find technology come to help. On the detection side, of course, you're already seeing a whole lot of technology get deployed at the airports, at hotel chains, just to even come up with ideas on who may be infected, who may be having an issue, who should I stay away from, how can I get to the workplace without being exposed to something like this. I think there's so much room for IoT-based action to happen, and complex event processing, which allows for detection of these things in quick time, has come to play already in the past 3 or 4 weeks, which will only go up in scale as time goes by. All of that put together, I think being adaptive, IT, in my opinion, takes the least brunt here because we're all used to working 40-50% of our time remotely in some fashion or the other. Some industries always needed people to be at the workplace. You go down to a restaurant, they have to serve the meal at the restaurant. How do you not be there? And so those are industries that will need the most help. And I do believe, if you just innovate your way out of crisis, you can get the best outcomes for yourself. And technology plays a huge role there.
Yeah, great answer. Raj, any thoughts on various industry impacts and how technology plays a role?
Yeah, so in education, in universities, people have to have a virtual classrooms. They are going to bring virtual realities, part of Harvard University. So they are running so many classes virtually. That's a new norm now for classes to be conducted. In the food industry, as CP mentioned, if you go to now Michelin star restaurant, they will have only 30% capacity to fill. Can they run their restaurant? No. Can they then leverage the technology platform? Who is going to pay $100 per meal, $200 per meal, ordering those food at home, right? So they might have to reduce their price, but they might have to offer better experience using a technologies. We have a product called FD Meal Planner, right? So if instead of just going to a Grubhub and ordering some food where you don't know where the ingredient is coming from, Michelin star restaurants needs to tell people where the food has come from, what kind of allergen information it has, what kind of calorie you're consuming. And if you're vegan, then these are the options you have. So if technology offers the Michelin star restaurants like this, they can still grow their business. So they got to find leveraging the opportunities of technologies and still thriving in this new world.
Yeah.
I think, Aaron, if I can just close on one point here, I think out of this whole crisis, I see one thing positive come out of this. I've always worked with 300-400 people across the globe as part of my team. So I've never had the opportunity. I've traveled extensively, but I've never had all of them face to face with me. Trust is a big part of getting anything done, and measurement through objectives and outcomes is perhaps the way to go. The IT technology space, in fact, has done this for a while. I'm guessing, and I'm hoping truly, that more industries pick on this topic, that if you did measure by objectives and outcomes and then implicitly trust people to do the thing that they needed to do, I have a belief that things will come through fine, regardless of whether they're face-to-face or not.
Yeah, I agree. There's certainly been some upside here as people have shifted. It does provide a lot more opportunity to get together, even though it's not quite as personal. It's easier to click a button and be in the room than to drive an hour away and show up, right? Being able to have quick meetings instantly is not the worst thing. But I really appreciate all your thoughtfulness on where this industry is moving, your support for companies affected regionally. And I want to thank you both for joining us today very much. I think it's been a really fascinating conversation. I want to thank Outsystems for sponsoring. If you're interested in learning more about the New Jersey Tech Council, check out NJTC.org. I forgot my closing question, which is I'm going to get back to, even though I'm skipping the beat here, which is this community is built by people who I like to say propel ideas into action and who want to help one another, even as exhibited by what you're saying, Raj, you're doing with Fulcrum. What could this community do to help you?
Platform, let's have a platform like this, bigger platform where we can bring multiple business problems. People need to learn from each other. So a lot of people are facing the common problem and challenges. Can a platform like Tech Council present those common problems, and can the problem solvers or solution providers can offer the optimal path for them, because that would be great help, right? So whether it is innovation lab, whether it is an examples which people can share. So something like that. You're a great, you are running a great organization. Under your leadership, I've seen NJ Tech Council has been growing leaps and bounds. So I'm pretty sure if you put your thoughts around it, I think we can carve out a good solutioning approach for this crisis,
I really appreciate that. I will let you know that as far as convening people to affect real issues, the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund came to us and said they were having some trouble. Could technology help solve the problem? And in less than a week, based on just some social media posts and tapping just a little part of the network, over 80 people said, hey, raised their hands and said that they wanted to help. We stood up a tech, what we're calling the tech SWAT team, and we should deploy a service for them by the end of the month. So I am enormously encouraged by how much this community wants to help one another, wants to put technology to good use. I think that is some of the upside here, is that we've all had a chance to kind of rethink our priorities and want to make sure that we can use our skill sets for some good. So I'll get back to the closing remarks and thanking you both for joining us. I really appreciate it. I look forward to when we can do this in person, but this was fantastic to do remotely. Before we go, we're going to take a little selfie and do a high five. So I know this is a little weird, but one of the things that we do at all of our events is I make everybody stand up and high five their neighbor, because it's a great way to meet somebody and it kind of changes the mood a little bit. So you're going to high five your webcam, even though no one's going to high five you back in person. They'll be doing it virtually. So even if you're watching this at home, high five your webcam. So first, for Raj and CP, we need to smile, because it turns out the output that we record, we don't get the three of us, and we're going to take a picture. If you're watching, take a screenshot, post it on social, add some commentary about what you thought about this, at NJ Tech Council on most of the platforms. But on the count of three, we smile for a second and then high five the camera, and we'll call it a day. We'll bring in Neeraj back for the smile and the high five. So smile on the count of three. All right, and high five on the next three. 1, 2, 3, boom. Have a great weekend. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate all your time. Thanks again to Outsystems for the sponsorship, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Thank you.